Well, I am sorry to say that you caught me in a really, really bad mood. My New York Giants continue to be absolutely horrible. The one of, if not the absolute worst team in the NFL. And the team that gave me hope, the Baltimore Orioles, I thought there was a legitimate chance that that team could finally make it to a World Series. I didn't need them to win the World Series. I just wanted them to make it to the World Series. And they get into the playoffs and they get eliminated, swept in their very first series of games in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
But you all don't want to hear me rant and rave about baseball or football. You want to hear me rant and rave about professional wrestling. We had a bit of a big thing happen this week with the Tuesday Night War with NXT and AEW, Dynamite going head-to-head, and all of the ensuing insanity that took place as both shows tried to compete with each other, which on paper sounds like a lot of fun. And it became almost comical, all the things that both sides were announcing to get on their specific episodes. It's like, we're going to go commercial free. It's like, screw you, so are we. And we've got John Cena and The Undertaker and yada, yada, yada. I'm surprised they didn't try to dig up Bruno Sammartino to be in the show or anything crazy like that. And AEW was like, well, we're going to do this match, and this title's on the line, and this title's on the line. And yeah, the whole thing was crazy. And, both fan bases were sniping each other back and forth on Twitter all day long. It was hilarious to look at, although it probably didn't represent the wrestling fan base at large very well. But the discourse, or lack thereof, made me laugh. But hey, whatever. And then you even had people involved, namely Tony Khan, throwing barbs every which way he possibly could. The big one today was after the ratings came out and AEW got absolutely trounced. He came out and said that Cena and Undertaker for the very first time were on a wrestling television show that didn't draw at least 1 million viewers. I'm sure somebody could probably just as easily say the same thing about Edge, who main evented his show, but be that as it may. It was very ugly all around. But again, I'm the kind of guy that enjoys watching other people act crazy. And no, look, I'm no stranger to saying stupid things on Twitter, but I also don't run a wrestling company, so there's no expectations from me. But in any case, I'm going to take the standpoint, and I didn't watch either episode live. I very rarely watch wrestling shows as they air anymore. I typically watch it on DVR the next day, and that's what I did here. What I will say, and this might be an unpopular opinion, I think both shows sucked. Like, I really did. I was watching both shows, and I'm just like, this is all you got? This is the cannon shots that you shoot at each other? This is like the heavy artillery? WWE with NXT, their third-tier brand, their developmental show, they went to the tried and true method of, we're going to bring a bunch of stars and just load them up onto the show. I'm surprised they didn't get Rock on the show, but we're going to throw John Cena out there. We're going to put Cody out there. We're going to put Undertaker out there, and people are going to tune in to see the stars, even if they don't do anything even remotely interesting. Cody, they brought him out to make a special announcement, and he comes out and announces a tag team tournament with his father's name on it, but it's a tag team tournament that has been an annual occurrence for years in NXT, so it's like, how is that a major announcement? He may as well have come out and announced that the Royal Rumble is happening. I mean, what's the difference? It's stupid. Like, and have they just given up on doing anything interesting with Cody? Like, I know this week they brought up the whole Michael Cole kind of calling him out for not finishing the story or anything like that, but lately with Cody, he's just spinning his wheels, and it's like, oh, now he's a tag champion, because what else are we going to do with him? I don't know, and it's just, Cody was one of the guys that I was watching WWE programming on a weekly basis to see, because I'm very, very high on Cody. He's one of my favorites. He's one of those guys that's in the tier of, like, one of the best in the business today. It's like, it's him, MJF, LA Knight, that's about it, but maybe a few other guys here and there, but for the most part, like, I think those are the top 3 performers going on right now, as far as, like, projecting themselves and connecting with the audience and all that stuff, but they just have not had anything interesting to do with Cody, and this is just, further evidence thrown onto the pile. It's like, you bring him in just to announce a tag team tournament? That's it? Okay. Then they bring in Undertaker to have him chokeslam Braun Breaker, which is like, I mean, that's it. He just showed up, chokeslammed a bitch, and left, and that's it. That's all you got for Undertaker. And also, if he's just going to do that and just chokeslam some scrub, maybe you shouldn't do it to the guy who's one of the top guys on your developmental brand, somebody that you want to turn into potentially a big star someday. Maybe he shouldn't be the one that just gets completely steamrolled by Undertaker. It's like, you don't got anybody else back there. You didn't have anybody else that could have eaten that chokeslam, and it wouldn't have done damage to your top guy. Now, again, like WWE, they're going to push whoever they want. They're going to do whatever they want. They're in that position where they can do that. And it doesn't matter. People will forget about that in a week anyway. But Undertaker was pointless, and most of that show felt pointless. And I did not feel compelled to come back to NXT next week. I'll put it that way, because it was just like a clip show almost. And WWE's done that plenty of times over the last decade and a half. It's one of their go-tos. It's like, just bring in the names, bring them in, have them do something, have them do a guest spot, and they do that to kind of generate interest. But then they don't have them do anything interesting. It's like, well, what the hell was the point of that? Like, I remember a few years back when they did one of the special Raws. I don't remember which one it was, but they brought out DX for the opening segment, and they just did their whole song and dance routine. And some people online were like, "This is one of the greatest segments in Raw history," and I'm like, It's just old DX doing the stuff that they were doing 20 years ago. What are we like? How is this like one of the greatest segments of all time? It's like watching animatronics at Disneyland. Like, what's the difference? So they do that a lot, and they did it a lot here, and it kind of worked as far as winning the battle against NXT. It certainly worked. Or I'm sorry, AEW. It definitely worked. But as far as like getting me to want to watch NXT every week, it didn't achieve that at all. I can't speak for everybody. Maybe some of the extra viewers they got this week will want to tune in next week. I don't know. I can't imagine it, because none of the NXT people left much of an impression on me, and the selling point were like the big name stars, and I don't know, that was it. And I'm a little surprised, to not to give any credence to Tony Khan or anything, but I was surprised they didn't crack 1 million with the names that they were throwing out there for this show. I thought, my prediction was that NXT would get into like the 1.2 million range, and AEW would be in like the 800,000 range. And that didn't happen. Both of them fared worse than I expected. I'm like, man, they couldn't crack 1 million with that level of star power on the show. Like, I don't know. NXT is kind of at least for me personally, it's a thoroughly uninteresting brand, which was not the case, a decade ago, but it's where we are now. So yeah, I didn't think NXT show was very good. I think it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, and like, here's who we got, and doing that whole thing. And it's like, dude, that novelty can only get you so far. And for me, like, the novelty of that wore off years ago. So something like that, not very interesting to me, and I am not going to come back to NXT next week. And then we go to AEW, which did the same thing that they always friggin' do. It's a special episode, and we're going to do pay-per-view quality matches. And it's I think that show had like 3 or 4 matches. They had Swerve and Danielson, they had Hangman and Jay White. And by the way, Hangman sucks now. Never let him anywhere near a microphone. It's like, dude, he was over when he was a beer-drinking cowboy that rode in on horses and just did his own thing. And now he's like this mopey-dopey guy that talks about dark clouds and all this other crap. And it's like, dude, don't talk to a therapist, man. Don't bring that crap to a pro wrestling program. We need you to be the beer-drinking cowboy. I know you got issues with CM Punk, and he was probably a meanie pants, but get over it. So yeah, Hangman is thoroughly uninteresting to me now. Like, you want to talk about somebody that I've really soured on over time, like Hangman, definitely. So there was that match, and then Edge and Luchasaurus was kind of that as well. I don't know. I think maybe they did Edge's first match too soon. I would have built that up over a long period of time, a lengthy period of time, like at least, like probably to the next pay-per-view, Full Gear, or next week, or whatever their next pay-per-view is, because AEW is now in the business of doing too many pay-per-views, like WWE has, but whatever, it's where we are right now. I would have built it up to the pay-per-view and made it feel like something special. Using it, again, I understand the situation. They got moved to a different night. They wanted to have something to try and get people to tune in on the different night. Didn't work, but hey, whatever. But it was, Yeah, so they did that whole like long competitive match thing that again, this is something that AEW does every week, every show, and it's not special anymore. I don't care how many star ratings these matches get. It has become thoroughly uninteresting, and it's old hat at this point. It's like, dude, you do this every week. Like every week you're doing these matches, and it makes the pay-per-views mean less. It makes all your shows mean less because ultimately you get to a point where it's not impressive anymore because you do it all the time. And it's just action on top of action on top of action on top of action. It's like, dude, I think back to like the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars. WCW and WWF, they've competed with each other by putting their stars in potentially interesting scenarios to create interesting matches, whether it be the NWO and Hogan versus Goldberg, Hogan versus Luger, Hogan versus Sting, DDP versus Savage, and all the stuff that they did with those storylines, the stuff with the Giant and Lex Luger as tag champions pursuing the Outsiders, the Steiner brothers pursuing the Outsiders, which they got like a year out of. NWO versus Four Horsemen and all the different angles that they did. I know people didn't like the Four Horsemen imitation angle. I did. I thought it was great. One of the best things WCW ever did. I don't care what anybody says, but they put their characters and their talents in situations that were interesting, that generated interest. And then you go, when WWF really hit their stride in like 97, 98, you had Austin driving a Zamboni down to the ring to go after Vince because Vince screwed him out of the title, or Kane digging up his parents' graves and chokeslamming the Undertaker into his mother's casket, like crazy wild crap like that. Like, that's what made the show so exciting, and that's what made them so engaging. It wasn't star rating. It definitely wasn't star ratings. That's not what they were chasing back then. And they did their fair share of stupid shit too, like Mark Henry getting a blowjob from a transsexual. That's why they call me Sammy, baby. That segment made me laugh back then, but I'm so immature. But anyway, they did their stupid crap, but ultimately it was the stories and the characters that drove intrigue in both WCW and WWF when they were at their best, when they were at their peaks. And now it's like, at least for WWE programming, it feels like a lot of the times they're spinning their wheels, where it's, if I watch one more episode of Raw that's either main evented by the Judgment Day or has a through line through the show where it's like, are there problems in the Judgment Day? I'm like, I don't know. You've been asking that question for 6 months. I feel like there's no evolution in this story. It's just the same crap every week. The Bloodline is dead in the water. I've kind of, said that already. They've lost a lot of steam since SummerSlam. And some people would probably even go even further back than that. And then you have NXT, which I just don't care about, and no amount of throwing big names onto NXT is going to get me to care about it. And then you look at AEW, they have too many belts, too many big matches, too many long matches, too many stables. Like, everybody has to be in a group now. It's like, people make fun of the NWO, and like half the roster was in the NWO, and I'm like, I'd rather have one giant stable than like 500 little ones that I have to keep track of everybody who's who in what group. It's just a mess. It is a creative mess. And look, I don't want to say there was nothing to enjoy on Dynamite. I like that Powerhouse Hobbs just dominated and squashed Jericho. That was way more impactful than having a back and forth match that went 20 minutes. I like that Wardlow powerbombed a chump, Matt Sydal. I think Wardlow is beyond repair at this point, but if they're going to try and fix him, these are the things they should be doing with him. Tony Storm's new character is working. I don't understand the point of having the silent movies during the picture-in-picture bits. And great, here's my take on the picture. I get it's a thing. It's part of the formatting now. I understand that. I'm not going to watch, to me, especially watching it on DVR, when the picture-in-picture thing shows up, I fast forward. And that it doesn't matter what's on there, because if I can't hear what's going on and you're going to put the stuff I care about on this little tiny screen while the commercials have all the audio and all it's playing, it's like I don't want to watch it. I just don't. I just skip over it every single time. And so that's probably doing a disservice to Tony Storm, whose new character is great. I get that they're trying to do something with it and make the picture-in-picture bits a little bit more substantial, but that didn't really work. Hopefully they don't go back to that, because like I said, it didn't work. And There was also the controversial segment about, anti-Semitism or whatever. I'm of the belief, and I've said it a million times, let heels be heels. Heels are bad guys. They say things that get under people's skin, and then the baby faces ultimately beat them. That's like Wrestling 101. It should be Wrestling 101. Nowadays, it's like everybody's so sensitive. It's like, well, this is why nobody gets over as a heel anymore, because they're not allowed to do anything bad because everything's offensive. And I don't know, like, to me, that whole segment was just making a mountain out of a molehill. It's like, look, it felt personal to MJF, and they're going to use that to fuel the match in Full Gear. That's it. What are we doing? Like, why are we getting all up in arms about this? I don't know. That didn't bother me. I don't think Jay White is anywhere near MJF's league on the mic, and that continues to show over and over again. And it's almost like a mismatch together to where they have no chemistry, because Jay White is just not anywhere near MJF's level on the stick, and it's just kind of sad to watch. Good. So my stance right now is that both shows kind of losing me creatively, and this week didn't help. I thought both episodes were garbage, or at least garbage is a harsh word. They were bland. They were very, very bland, and they just did the same old tricks, the same rabbits out of the hat that they always friggin' do, and I found myself thoroughly bored by both shows, and I should not be bored by a show that has Edge having his first match outside of the WWE in 25, since 1998, or when was, whatever he was doing before WWF. And I should not be bored by a show that has The Undertaker on it. It's just, and Cody Rhodes as well. I shouldn't be bored out of my mind, but I was thoroughly for both shows. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable to me. And to see both fan bases get so up in arms, defending both shows so passionately, and I'm sitting there like, neither one's that good. What are we doing? Like, come on. We should be calling them out for how bad they are. They're bad and they should feel bad. I jest. Now, granted, again, I've said before, there have been periods where WWE was much, much, much worse than it is now. It's just, I think the show is bland, boring, and it's spinning its wheels. That's my personal opinion. And AEW just can't get out of their own way. They just think they have fully subscribed to the mindset that long matches, star ratings, that's the key to making money. And it's like, no. And it doesn't help that they have 3 shows a week. It doesn't help that they're expanding their pay-per-view calendar. It doesn't help that they have too many belts, too many stables, too many things going on. It's just, the whole thing is just kind of a sloppy mess. And they are in desperate need of, I don't know exactly who's involved in creative, but they are in desperate need of like a script doctor. I keep saying it, like the wrestling equivalent of a script doctor, somebody go in there with a red pen and just be like, don't do this, change this, do this, and just kind of fine tune that whole program. And WWE, I hate to say it, but they need somebody like a Vince Russo to kind of spice things up a little bit, because right now it's just kind of boring. Not Vince Russo specifically, because I think we know what he's all about, but somebody who can kind of like has a vision and can like spice these stories up a little bit, because right now it's just, again, if I watch one more episode of Raw that's about, are there problems in the Judgment Day, I'm gonna lose my friggin' mind. It's so boring. It's just, I don't care anymore. So yeah, that's my take on the current wrestling products. It's not great. One wrestling product I did enjoy. I was going to review it last week and it completely slipped my mind. I felt bad about it, but I'm going to give a personal recommendation for anybody who has not watched it to go ahead and check it out. That is Wrestlers on Netflix, a docu-series about OVW and the behind-the-scenes look at how they run the OVW wrestling show, which is currently run by Al Snow, somebody who I have a great amount of respect for as a mind for wrestling. He's one of my favorite shoot interviews because I agree with the vast majority of what he says. Like, he's like, this is going guts it. And it's a shame that, he... I don't know, like, not enough people listen to Al, I feel like. And I will say this, though. Whoever had the idea to promote or to do a docuseries about a OVW and to bring a camera crew in to film OVW and do like a behind the scenes look at OVW is an absolute stroke of brilliance, because you couldn't ask for a better advertiser for the wrestling show than that, to put a docuseries up on Netflix. And I'm somebody who is, I'm not going to say I'm the most knowledgeable wrestling fan in the world, but I am more tuned into the wrestling business than the average person. But by far, for sure. I will put myself at least in that camp. I did not know that OVW was still running. I was like, so when my wife, who was the one that found this docuseries, she pulled it up and I was like, OVW is still around? I didn't even know it was still around. And I'm watching this thing and I'm like, they run pay-per-views? How have I not heard about this? You know, even if you're not interested in wrestling, I think you would probably get some enjoyment out of the docuseries because you get to see like a real down and dirty behind the scenes look of how a wrestling show is run, and one that is without the WWE level of production. This is like a little engine that could struggling wrestling company that is dying to get attention and to get positive promotion out there, and everything that they do to try and capture people's attention and promote their stars and do everything. And a lot of these people, like Cash Flow, very interesting character who's like, he gives off the air of somebody who's like a veteran in wrestling that never got a big break, but because he's been around so long in OVW, he's kind of like the veteran that everybody looks up to. He's kind of like the locker room leader by default. Even though he never necessarily became a huge name on a major stage, he did. He's a big star in the OVW locker room, and he's well respected. At least that's the air that's given off through the docuseries. And you got like fresh young talents like Hollywood Haley J, who really captured my attention. I was like, all the on-screen wrestling stuff, I'm like, man, she looks great. And then you see her behind the scenes, I'm like, oh, she's a little immature. And they bring that up in the docuseries. Al Snow basically says as much. But it was interesting to watch her as well. And it's a very interesting look at behind the scenes of a small indie fed. And again, stroke of brilliance to put this thing on Netflix. Whoever came up with it, absolutely brilliant. Because now it's like, I'm kind of interested in checking out OVW now. I kind of want to go. I was talking to my wife after we watched it. I'm like, man, I kind of want to go watch that big one pay-per-view. Because this was filmed in 2022. So I'm like, man, I kind of want to go back and watch some of those shows that were that were covered on the next Netflix thing. I want to watch that Hollywood match where she wrestled her mom, and I want to see that the big one where Al Snow worked the main event and came out of retirement to work the main event and things like that. So I'm kind of interested. So I'm wondering if because I've heard their attendance has gone up tremendously since they did the Netflix thing, which is great. And I wonder if people have gone back and bought their other pay-per-views from during the time of the Netflix show. Just people, because I think for a lot of people, this is the first time we heard any of this was going on. I had no idea that Al Snow was involved in OVW. I had no idea OVW still existed. There was one point where they were explaining OVW's place in the world of wrestling. They were like, you've got WWE, which is number one, you've got AEW, which is number two, and then we're somewhere on that third tier. And I'm like, wait, guys, I think I can name 5 companies that are bigger than OVW. TNA, Impact, GCW. I would say New Japan, because they have a weekly American wrestling show and they run American shows. So I would say New Japan. I would say even NWA, for as small as they are, and maybe WOW, Women of Wrestling, is probably another one. And then somewhere at the bottom of that is OVW. But like I said, this docuseries was a great, great, great advertisement for them, and it was fascinating to watch. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And they kind of sold me. I think I'm going to check out their next pay-per-view is No Rest for the Wicked, and happening in a couple weeks. I'm like, damn it, I might check it out. I might be watching some OVW, because they also said something on there, kind of a correction to a statement I have to make, where I said that when Impact did its 1,000th episode, it's this is the longest running weekly wrestling show that isn't a WWE show. I have to amend that, because they say on here that OVW has had a weekly live wrestling show aired in their local market for over 1,200 episodes. And I was like, yeah, I guess, okay. So, and OVW, it's nice to see them get a little boost like this, because they were, it's where Randy Orton came from, and Brock Lesnar came from, and Batista came from, and John Cena came from, that famous 2002 class. And it's people don't need to forget that. And Again, it was very interesting to see, and I was really happy to watch it. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and that's my Netflix recommendation for you. So go check that out. Highly recommended. Much better than this week's NXT, and much better than this week's Dynamite. That's my stance on the matter. But I think that is it. That is all I have for you now. I think I've ranted and raved long enough. So be sure to follow me on Twitter at PatrickGBook. The link is in the description. Also, Godzilla the Monster Fight Record. My book is available for sale at Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Those links are also in the description. Also, my book tour begins next week. You'll be seeing interviews that I did pop up in various places. So I'll be sure to post those on Twitter. Again, the link is in the description. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.